So we have the EV9 here, and kind of just for reference purposes, we got the telluride here too. And just to get this out the way, this car's gonna run you about 54,000, and it's electric. So 0 to 60 is about, I think, 4.4 seconds, or maybe a little less. But you know, all the electric cars gonna get you at least 4 something. So that's no surprise there. But I don't really care about that. So get that out of here. So let's talk about the design of the EV9. I think it looks cool. Just like to get that out of the way. But I think it's a little too cyberpunk. Like, look like Kia made it, and it's like it's kind of caught in between trying to be like the EV6 and kind of trying to be like different and cyberpunk-ish, and also trying to be like rugged. And I think it looks a little weird. And in my opinion, if they wanted to make an electric SUV like this, like a 3-row, I feel like they should have went a little bit more based off this telluride. That's why I got it here. And maybe just kind of made some fine adjustments to that, and then made an EV like that. But I think the adjustments that they could have made to the telluride to make it an EV, I'm kind of caught in between, thinking it should have been something to make it look a lot better than the telluride, while also not making it look too different. Because I think if they made it look too much better, it's like, say, imagine this car looked 1,000 times better than Telluride, but it was still based on Telluride. Then nobody would buy the Telluride. But then I'm thinking too that most people making a decision between a gas powered car and an EV, they're probably already set if they want to buy an EV or they want to buy a gas powered car. And if the EV version looked that much better, but they wanted a gas powered car, they probably still just gonna get the gas power. So I don't really know. But to kind of talk about this, first, the front, I think that's like the biggest cyberpunkish part of the car, like, especially with these headlights here. Like, I think these just like running lights. I think these probably the headlights in here. But even like just the real absurd angle on it, I think kind of just lets you know from the jump like what type of car this is. I do like how they still kind of implemented I think the tiger mouth design that they call it. That's like super old, but somehow they still managed to get into these cars despite making them look completely different than what they look like however many years ago. In terms of designing the whole front end, I think maybe I'm a little bit like old school, maybe kind of basic, but I think this should probably have been, this line here should have probably been just straight, and then make this kind of come up a bit more vertically as opposed to this angle here. And then this looks good to me, this straight line, and then kind of having this kind of come in like that. I think that might make it look a bit like a Ford, but I think that would look better and kind of wouldn't throw off the design so much, especially when you got lines just going all over the place. Like, you got this, and it's like, I don't even think that's symmetrical with this or parallel with that. And then this one here, and it's like they just kind of throwing in a bunch of extra stuff because you already have this over the wheel arch here, this whole like black part, and it kind of gives you the rigidness, I guess, that you're looking for. But then you go add a whole nother line here that's like, okay, now you're kind of overdoing it. So I think that was kind of unnecessary, but kind of trying to focus back on the front end. I kind of like this, how they did this, and I think if they had the more vertical lines up top, then I think this shape with that up top that I drew, I think that would probably kind of subdue the car a little bit, at least in the front end, so it wouldn't look so crazy. And I think maybe the headlight and the running light design, if I can get this stuff out of the way, that I talked about at first, this right here, I think this is probably like the biggest thing that kind of takes you into the cyberpunk land of things. But then looking at the telluride, I feel like I used to think that this car looked like it was like Kia's like rugged type of car. Now kind of comparing it to the EV9, and then kind of looking at this too, this here, I feel like that's, yeah, the telluride is definitely not rugged, especially compared to the new cars today. And then before I actually get into the telluride, I feel like the Lexus GX is kind of what Kia was kind of going for, but then maybe somebody was like, let's make it cyberpunk, and then it kind of got lost in the mix. Because I think Kia could, like, the way they designing cars, I think they could have made a real good like version of this car down here, of the GX, and it'd be with Kia's kind of design elements. I think that would probably look pretty good. But I think adding the kind of not to keep saying cyberpunk, but adding that into the car, I kind of think threw it off a little bit from what it could have potentially been. But looking back at the telluride, I think the telluride is kind of like if you're looking at somebody and they're like in good shape, you see they got muscles, then they kind of stand next to the rock, and it's like, okay, you're not really that big when compared to the rock. I think looking at the telluride like by itself, it's like, okay, it's a nice amount of rugged, not too much. Like you still have like right here on the wheels, you kind of have this smooth surface in here, all at the same time kind of having almost like a rigid line coming down here, and then it's still like overall pretty much a boxy design. I think they kind of have a good combination with the telluride that they don't really have with the EV9, and I think it looks pretty good. And I think without looking at it next to the Lexus or next to the EV6, I think you could still say that, okay, this is a rugged design vehicle, and then it still has that proper balance that I think the EV9 doesn't really have. Looking at the telluride some more in the front end, I think this was a pretty good example of not over styling, and I think kind of after the EV6, I think Kia maybe is kind of moving into the realm of over styling. Like even the headlight, it's pretty simple, and it has this, I like this crease that it has like on the outside, then it kind of runs right into this intake on the front. And then the intake itself is not even like super stylized. It's just pretty much just opening in the front. And then again, you kind of have the symmetrical intake down here that kind of matches with this. And it's basically not doing too much, but it looks good. And I think those kind of have a relationship of not doing too much and looking good. And I think sometimes it looks good because it's not doing too much. And I think a lot of newer cars are kind of missing the mark with that. I do wish that some of this chrome like this here, and then the whole grill up here, and even the telluride badge, I wish that was black, especially on this version. And then over here too, like around the windows, I feel like that should have been black. And down here, I feel like everything chrome on this, at least on this version of the car with the black wheels and stuff, I feel like everything should have been black. But overall, and in this color, especially looking at this car on the street with the amber headlights, I think it looks pretty good. Kind of looking at it in this picture kind of makes it look a little less nice and a little more soccer mom in this picture, but in person it definitely looks a lot better, especially with the amber headlights. At night it's kind of like either it's a Raptor or it's a Telluride, so I think that's pretty cool. Looking at the side of the EV9, I'm not gonna waste any time. I think the main problem is that it sits like way too low. It's supposed to be like you have a rugged design vehicle, even if it do look like a kid designed it, I feel like it's sitting way too low, and it makes it look just like fat and heavy. Like I got this picture of the concept, and the concept obviously has some different elements in it too, but I think it looks a lot better just because of how high it sits. Let me take a second to look at that. I think looking at it from a side view its height is what throws me off the most from the car itself, because it just doesn't really suit a 3-row SUV that's rigid in its design for it to be sitting as low as it does, especially with those big wheels too. I kind of think that even throws it off more, because now it's just looking, I don't know, it's like it's dragging when it shouldn't really be. But I think you kind of see in the Telluride, I think that kind of sits somewhat low too, but I don't know, I think it just kind of throws off the EV9 a bit more. But then kind of getting further into the design, I think that this window, I feel like my design opinions usually are the same, but I feel like this could have maybe just came all the way back, like the window all the way back there, but then maybe it would have looked somewhat like a minivan. And I think that too, the height of how low it sits, I think that kind of makes it look a bit like a minivan too, because most minivans usually don't sit up that high, and I think that kind of throws it off. But I feel like maybe just trying to imagine, I think the window going all the way to the back without having this kind of swoosh up would have made it look a little better, and kind of would have reduced some of the over styling that I think is kind of messing this car up. The wheels, I think the wheels are cool, but I don't like them. It's like, it's cool to see different wheels. Like these wheels are cool and I like them because they stick to the script. It's like you got spokes, you kind of have like a double, like this is almost like a wheel right here, if I can draw it like this here, so you got this one here, like that, and then they got extra spokes, and it's like you can't really go wrong with a design like that. Black wheels, decent amount of spokes, but then it's like to kind of mix it up here, kind of giving you, it's almost like kind of the same as the car with like the rugged and cyberpunk kind of combination. But I think they are cool, especially for the EV, having kind of still having somewhat of a spoke design, even if it's just 4 big ones here, while still having that surfacing that you want to kind of give that extra range, I guess, that people are so concerned about. But I think from the side, I think the side might be his best angle, or maybe the rear 3/4 with the back in it a little bit. I think that might be his best angle, and maybe if it just wasn't so low, because that's where you can really see how low it is looking at it from the side, and I think that kind of throws it off. And I feel like this front window should have been tinted, but that's not a reasonable point. Speaking of the best angle, I think that is this, and looking at it from here kind of makes me want to reiterate what I was saying about the window, how I think it would look pretty good if it wrapped around all the way like this. I think it would make it look somewhat like a Range Rover, but you know, good ideas should be shared. So if it looks like a Range Rover, then it looks like a Range Rover. I think if they did that, I put this line back here. Oh, that's terrible. If they did that and get rid of this unnecessary angle on this tail light, maybe just make it so the tail light, even if it just comes from right here and maybe just goes down somehow, I don't know. Maybe if they was to do like, let me see, try to get creative. Maybe do the tail light to like do the light bar, which I'm surprised this car doesn't have a light bar actually, and kind of do it similar to the telluride. Kind of imagine something like telluride, but thinner tail lights, and then having it kind of come all the way around like that. I think that would look pretty good. And then kind of eliminates this weird angle here that I don't think really needs to be here. I think too, if you raise the car up, get rid of that angle, maybe even get rid of this wing up here, because I don't think that needs to be there either. I think that's because it's not a race car, and it's like I think that kind of adds to the way that it looks like it was designed by a kid, because kids probably gonna put a wing on everything. But if you get rid of that, change how the tail light is, change the headlight up front, and just overall just take like a broom and like sweep off all the unnecessary angles and things that kind of add to the more cyberpunk aesthetic, and probably change the wheels, pretty much change everything. Then I think it would probably look pretty good. And I feel like, again, kind of to my first point, I think maybe making something similar to the Telluride, maybe you just call it Telluride EV, and just kind of make it looks different enough to warrant somebody actually wanting to buy it. I think that would probably been pretty good. But I can't really imagine who's buying this, but I'm sure there's gonna be some people out here buying it. But then too, I don't even think the EV market is doing as good as people expected it to. So who knows? They might be out on the street, they might not be out on the street, but we'll see. And if I see one in the streets, I'll probably be excited, because I'm sure they probably look a lot better in person than in the pictures. But with that being said, that's all I gotta say. Be smooth, be safe. To my 10 subscribers, be cool.
Tell me what you want, girl. Yeah, I got what you need. You know that we gone, girl. Just say what you think. Introverted love.